Hi guys. The other day, I actually went out and did some photography. Yes, I did. Went out on my first landscape shoot of 2020. Went out with a friend and a fellow patron, Jeff, and we went over to Llyn in North Wales. And we went over expecting the weather to match up with the weather forecast, which said fog. Yes, and we didn't have any fog. No. It was horrible. It was just low cloud, full of clag, very dull, very overcast. And then, but there was no wind. No wind, not a breath of wind. And so the lake was like a mirror, but the photography, there was just no chance. And then suddenly, of course, because it's me, the sun always shines on the bloody righteous, yes, and we'd been there for about 3/4 of an hour, and the sun decided to come out. Yes, it did. And we ended up being able to get this. I love this shot, and I just think it's really nice. And it's got one or two problems with it, namely the boulder here in the foreground is a little bit too far to the right. And if I remember, I'll show you what you can do to that, about that, at the end of this video. Must remember. But it's not something I would necessarily do for my own ends. But I could really do with the high point of this boulder being directly under the high point or the summit reflection of Ir Arran, because this is Ir Arran here. This is obviously Llyn, and this is the far side of Llyn. I forget what they call this now. But anyway, there we go, it's beside the point. But it was lovely. Now, I shot this with Nikon D800E and the 2470 f2.8. And we're clocking around 35-36 millimeter focal length on this. Because I didn't want to go too wide, because as you can see here in the finished image, we've got the end of a fence. Now, I don't particularly mind the end of this fence being in the image, but there's quite a few ropey looking trees over here, and they do look quite ropey because they've lost all the leaves because it's the middle of winter. And so I didn't really want those in the image, because I would have ended up cropping them out anyway. So that little bit of fence can stay there as far as I'm concerned. I might take it out at a later date, because that's how I am with my images. I tend to work them up as far as I want them, and then might be another 2-3 months and I'll go back and visit it again, and I might do something else to it. But you know, that's such is life. But the problem is, first off, shooting at 35-36 mil, there is no way on God's earth I'm going to get this sharp here and this foreground sharp. And so it's derived from two raw files actually, so it's a focus stack. And we've got this raw file here, which is sharp on the foreground, but obviously not sharp on the background. And then we've got this one here, which is obviously way out on the foreground rock, but really super sharp on the background. And we've got these super sharp reflections. I mean, those reflections are awesome, aren't they? But of course, because I got a client with me and it was a paid day, then the client gets to take the photos first. And so when it was my turn, I turfed Jeff out and put my gear in the same spot, and we got this shot. But it's funny really. Ducks, yes, ducks. We had a visit from a couple of mallard who flew in because they saw a couple of people, and as far as they're concerned, people mean food. And so it was a pain in the backside, because a bit later on, when I wanted to do put a polarizing filter on and a 2-stop soft edge grad, the ducks were gambling in the water. There was only a pair of them, gambling in the water off down towards that grotty looking headland where those trees are, and they actually filled the entire lake, which has got to be 1.5 miles long and 1/2 mile wide. They filled the entire lake with ripples. Yes, they did. Who would have thought it, that an essential part of kit for a landscape photographer was a bloody shotgun? Anyway, there we go. So fundamentally, we've got a focus stack, and we'll come back to the finished image. So what we've fundamentally done is taken the image into Photoshop. We've done the focus stack manually. We haven't focus stacked it in Lightroom or used any gizmo or algorithm to do it. It's just a straightforward manual, lay one image over the other and just paint a mask on, and Bob's your uncle, it's done. But if we go to the intermediate TIFF where we've done the focus stack, you can see we've also got some problems with some errant rocks. Now, I knew these rocks were there, and you know, you do your edge patrol and you check that there's nothing really super annoying at the end of your image. Yeah, you could say this tree reflection here is super annoying, but you know, it is what it is. There's not a lot you can do about it. But I got these 2 rocks here, which I gently adjusted my camera height wise and position wise to actually get these in the open area of the reflection. Yeah, because if it had been a little bit lower, they would have been in the reflections of these trees, so they would have been even more difficult to remove. So I was deliberately putting these here, but with me positioning and putting these here, it led me to a problem with this little clump of rock here, and it's hiding essentially this bit here. So I actually need to take this rock out, but as you'll see when I demonstrate it using content-aware fill, content-aware fill cannot possibly replicate an upside down version of this, because it can't sample from that area and then invert it. So it's only going to sample from around here, so it's not going to be an accurate fill. For a small JPEG to go on social media, that's not going to really matter, but if you're contemplating doing a big print of this image, then it'll stand out like a sore thumb. So let us scoot off over into Photoshop, and what I'm going to do, I'm not going to bother doing any dodging and burning, because you've seen me do that before, and I might as well, while I'm here, just mention, if you feel like it, go and have a look at my ultimate dodging and burning technique downloadable course. It's over there on my digital download store for the princely sum of 32 quid. Yes, and well worth it. Had a lot of good reviews, so if you've not got it, go and have a look at it, because it will revolutionise your picture output. Right, so shameless plug over. We'll come over to Photoshop, because I've got that intermediate TIFF. Remember, all it's had done to it is the focus stack, so we are fundamentally sharp in the foreground, okay, and we are sharp in the background. So what are we going to do? The first thing we need to tackle is these 2 boulders over here. So we're going to use content-aware fill, which you've seen me demonstrate before. And the thing is about content-aware fill, it's very dependent upon the actual selection that you put round it. And you know, you can select something 2 or 3 times, and each time you'll get a slightly differing result. Sometimes you might need to just select one rock. Sometimes you might need to just select the other one. Other times you might get away with doing both at the same time. So let's just try both at the same time. And we'll just go around there rather like that, and then we will just go, and you notice I've got to feather 1 pixel. Yeah, always worth just feathering that selection just ever so slightly. We will now go to edit, and we'll go content aware fill, and let's see what content aware fill does. I don't think that's looking too bad. You can see we're into it at 82% here. We'll just take that up to 100% and then just scoot the image over. So this is what we're looking at. This is what it's done. So is it going to make any difference if we change the colour adaptation from default up to high? And let's just see what happens now. Now you can see it's made it go a little bit too blurry. And the thing about reflections in flat, calm water is there is always ripples somewhere within the area of that reflection, and distortions, surface distortions. So you will see that the reflection, when you look at it properly and closely, is fundamentally blotchy in terms of sharpness and clarity. So that's why I very carefully in the magnified live view screen position the camera in such a way as to put these boulders in this relatively open area, which I take it is dead bracken on the upper slopes of the far side of the lake. I'm not particularly keen on that. If we put it to very high, I suspect it will make it go even blurrier. Yes, it does. And if we turn it to none, then it's a little bit too sharp. So I think we'll leave it on default, rather like that. And we might just need to go and titivate that up with the clone stamp tool. So we'll click OK. And I don't really think that's looking too bad. If we go select, deselect, it's not looking too bad, not really. Nobody's really going to notice these, but we can just come over with the clone stamp tool. We'll just bob in a new empty layer there, sampling current and below with the clone stamp tool itself. And what are we going to do? Let's just drop the opacity of the clone stamp tool to around about 67%, and we'll just out click on there and then just come and titivate in there just to hide those trees. And we might just come and break that little green patch up there, and maybe there as well. And honestly, I don't think, even if we were to do a 50 or 60 inch print of this, I don't really think that that's going to cause the print viewer any problems whatsoever. However, I'm just going to go layer, and I'm going to go flatten image, and then we are just going to grab the navigator tool, and we're going to come over to this baby. Now then, these rocks, yeah, I need to get rid of that clone stamp tool before we have a nasty accident. These rocks, now if you think about it, if we use the content aware fill method to remove it, the content aware fill algorithm is going to be looking at pixels that are around here somewhere. The actual bit of landscape that is missing from this reflection is actually up here. Now then, I'm going to show you the method that we've always used to make repairs in areas such as this inside of Photoshop, and it's patching, but we're not using the patch tool. This is fully manual patching. If I come back down here, these rocks stick out into this water quite a bit, so I'm going to have to take quite a big patch of sky to actually cover these. So I want to reduce the rocks in the first place, so I don't really need to patch in quite so much sky. So I'm just going to do a relatively tight selection around there, rather like that, and we are just going to go to Edit, Content Aware Fill, and let's see what happens. There we go. You can see it's created an error here and an error here, and it's sort of replicated that bump that we've got on the true skyline, but it in effect reduced where the rocks were, it's reduced their incursion into the water. So what we're going to do is click OK, because even though it's wrong, it's going to help us a little bit. So we'll just go select, deselect, and this is where the fun starts. We're just going to come up to here, and I'm going to get the lasso tool again, and I'm just going to come and lasso around there, rather like that. And then we're going to go Command or Control J to jump that selection to a new layer. And you can see if I turn this background layer on, or off I should say, you can see what we've got on the new layer. The very first thing we need to do to this new layer is to convert it to a smart object. Now, the reason we've converted it to a smart object is whatever we do to it from now on, whether we distort it or we shrink it or whatever, we can fundamentally go back and make changes to our adjustments. If we don't convert it to a smart object, whatever we do to this will rasterize it, and therefore it will be set in stone. And if we basically cock it up, we're going to have to delete it and go back and start again. So now we've converted it to a smart object, the next thing I'm going to do is go to Edit, Transform, Flip Vertical. Whee! And then we will come out to a Fit to Screen View. We will pick up the Move tool again, and we'll go and grab that, and we'll drop it roughly where we need it to be. And then what we'll do is we'll go and zoom in again. Bom, 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 bom. Where are we? Yeah, rather like that. And then we'll go pick the Move tool up again, and we'll drop the opacity of the smart object to around about 50%, so we can partially see through it, and we can get its positioning right. It should be over here, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to align this bit with this bit manually, and I'll switch over to my mouse, and we'll just drop that in there. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is turn the opacity all the way back up again, and then I need to tonally make it fit. So I'm going to go to Adjustments, and I'm going to use a Levels adjustment for this, but I'm going to hit this button here like that, and we're going to clip this Levels adjustment with a clipping mask button, so it only affects the smart object underneath and it doesn't affect the rest of the image. Now we've got to make certain adjustments, because always without fail reflections are darker than the object that they are reflecting, if you get me drift. So now we know that we've got to darken this smart object down. So I'm just going to come into the highlight level dialog box, and I'm just going to change this to the sort of low 240s. I'm going to come into the mid-tones, and I'm just going to change that to sort of middle 0.9s to 1s. Just going to move it ever so slightly, and we'll just type 0.94. Yes, because that's the mid-tone, if you like. That's the gamma that controls the contrast. And then we're going to come into the output, which is at 255 for the white end of the histogram, and we're just going to change that to something quite severe like 210. And now you can see it matches pretty much, and that's fundamentally the beauty of using a levels adjustment layer on a little patch like this. You can make some very, very, very subtle adjustments, but as you can see, if I turn those two layers off, there are one or two alignment issues, and this could actually do with being squashed down a little bit, because again, if I turn them off, whoops-a-daisy, you'll see it needs to be a little bit distorted through the reflection. So what I'm actually going to do is to come back onto the smart object, and I think I will just go and lay on the puppet warp tool, and I'm going to use a mouse for this because pens tend to move the puppet warp mesh as you're putting the pins on. And all I want to do is just drop a few pins on these intersection points here, just to lock in certain parts of the image and stop them from being distorted too much. I'm just going to drop a couple of pins in there as well, and then this pin here, I'm just going to move it and just squash that little hump just a little bit, and then I'm going to get this intersection over here, click and push up to make it blend in with the existing landscape in the underlying layer. I think that will just about do. So we'll just click on there. And then the other thing I want to do, because it is a clone, if you like, of the real hump in the landscape on the skyline, it's going to be super sharp. So all we're going to do is, still while we're working on this smart object, I'm just going to go to, well, we're going to go filter, and we're going to go to blur, Gaussian blur, and I'm just going to add 0.2 of a pixel Gaussian blur to that smart object, and we'll click OK. Now that smart object is quite expansive within this little area of the image, so there's a lot of it that we don't really need. So I want to mask the majority of it away and just keep the bits that are actually necessary. Now this empty white mask here, that's for the levels adjustment, so we don't want to be touching that. This one is for the smart object itself, but I don't really want to be touching that one either. The simplest and best and cleanest way of doing this is to select both the smart object layer and the levels adjustment layer, and to click on the little icon in the layers panel there and choose new group from layers. I'm just going to leave this called group 1, and there we go. Now we've gained more real estate in our layers panel, and we can now add a layer mask to that, or a group mask to be more correct, and then I can go with a brush, painting with black. We can see the extent of the smart object group, and there's obviously a lot of sky here that I don't need, and I think what we'll do is we'll paint with a yes, we've got a hardness of 0, got good opacity. Might turn the flow rate. No, I'm not going to turn the flow rate down. I think what we'll do is we'll just paint with a bigger brush, because we still want a feathered edge to it. Alright, so we're painting the majority of that water away, or the sky's reflection, I should say, in the water. We're going to turn the background layer on, and then what we can do is we can turn this on and off, and you can see we've just got a little fault there where we're just starting to show the underlying layer because it's sticking out a little bit. So we'll just go back and paint in that layer with white, and we can make that little fault go away, and then we can revert to black, and we will just come in here and just blend away what isn't needed, rather like that. And because we've squashed it a bit, so we've given it a little bit of distortion, we've put 0.2 pixels of Gaussian blur on it. If we wanted to put more Gaussian blur on it, because it's a group and a smart object, therefore we could come into the expanded group and go to the Gaussian blur, and there is our 0.2 pixels. We could actually up that to 0.3 or 0.4 pixels should we desire. Alrighty, and then go and close the group down again just to keep things all neat and tidy. And yeah, fundamentally there's our little patch. I think we just need to come in with that black brush again on that group mask, and we might just need to just paint our way through there. Maybe make the brush a little bit smaller. Yep, and that will just about do. I mean, if we view that at 100%, that looks mega convincing, doesn't it? Yeah. So that's just a nice, simple, quick, clean way of getting an accurate patch on a reflection. But it's a technique that you need to bear in mind, because it will come in useful in all sorts of places within Photoshop. It comes in especially useful with landscapes, and it can come in very useful with product and pack shots as well. The only other thing I will say is this. If I just go to layer, flatten image, and you know I'm unhappy with the position of this rock here. Well, this isn't something I would do in reality, but if I was doing this image specifically for a website, I might, and you might like to do this. You'll certainly get away with it on prints up to A3 size, and you'll certainly get away with it if you want a picture, a JPEG on a website, or Flickr, Instagram, or whatever. We could actually go and correct the alignment problem, which was sort of forced upon me with this boulder, by going and getting the content aware move tool. But in reality, I don't like this tool. I'll be quite honest. I wouldn't do it on this image for myself, because this image is, or could be, destined for a big print, and this can really give you problems. I'm actually going to go around the entire bottom of the image with this, and then just come and shift it until the point of that rock is really where I want it, or I would have liked it in the actual shot itself. And we'll just let the content aware move tool do its thing. I mean, I have asked it to do quite a lot, and there we go. So if I just go select, deselect, that rock's pretty much where I want it. The only thing is, if you look around here, you can see you've got these blurred edges and a blurred edge along the bottom. So what you could do is add a mask, and if we go into the image at 100%, I mean, yeah, it's done a relatively good job of shifting things, but now you can see this blurry edge that's been put in. And as I said, you may not notice it. You see, you've got repeating patterns here, so you can get away with it sometimes if you pull up brush tool, paint with black inside the mask, and what we'll do is we'll paint with quite a big brush, 100% opacity, 100% flow, and painting inside the mask we can make that softness go away. And your only problem is going to be repeating patterns in your background or whatever you are erasing into. Luckily, with this being such a highly detailed area, I can fundamentally get away with it because I can confuse the eye by dodging between the overlying layer and the underlying layer detail, because it is so fine with it being this shingle, etc., and gravel at the bottom of the lake itself. It does cause a lot of problems. You see, we've got a repeat here and here, which, yes, you can get rid of using content aware. Where's that gone now? It's here, isn't it? You could use the spot healing brush with that proximity match or content aware fill. Let's just take that up and maybe replace that in there. Not really doing a great deal, is it? Am I doing something wrong there? Yes, I've got the content aware fill in. Yeah. Don't quite understand why that's not worked, actually. Oh, it's because I'm in the what a wally. Let's come into here and just painting that. I was painting inside the mask, wasn't I? I noticed nobody told me. Yeah, you should have been banging on the inside of my screen saying, Andy, you're in the wrong place. It's alright, I'll shut up in a minute and I'll go away. But let's just come and keep brushing through here to get rid of any outline blur. You can see we've got outline blur there. And like I say, you can sort of fudge your way around things. I'm not going to go any further. But you sort of get the idea. I mean, from a compositional point of view, I've got rid of my one existing major problem with this image, but it isn't really something that I would advise you to do, especially if you're going for a big print. Because if you make or if you fail to pick up an error in there, or you get a repeating pattern that you haven't noticed, it can be quite a costly error. So, I mean, the ethics of it, moving something in the foreground, I don't know, I'll leave that entirely up to you. But as I said, I'm fundamentally happy with the final image. Yeah, I might try it by moving this rock, but somehow I don't think I will. Anyway, there we go. That's enough of me rambling. I hope you've sort of picked up one or two useful techniques from that video, guys. And just remember, old school patching without the patch tool, a manual patch. Tedious, yes. Difficult, no. Anyway, until the next time, guys and gals, stay well, stay safe, and keep taking the pictures. Yes, tooroo.